Hey guys, here's the pipe threader. This was part of the Millwright Power Tools performance eval, and what you're going to do is you're going to thread a couple pieces of pipe and make a 18-inch long center-to-center piece with 2 elbows on it and a union in the middle. We'll get into more detail with that later, but right now we're going to go through the pipe machine. First thing they talked about in the level 2 book was checking the oil level. This is just a catch pan that catches any of the clips or chips that fall out, and then there's a finer one down here, or a more, right there's your oil level. On most of them there's a mark on the side that tells you that the oil level is at the right height. This one we just basically base off of there's oil in it, and we'll check the oil that comes out when we're doing the die head as we go forward. But that's how you check that. Next step, next part of what they talked about in the book would be priming the pump. I'm going to use this one because it's plugged in, or checking the oil flow. The only one that's going to have oil flow is when we cut threads. So we turn it on and you see the oil coming through, so we have flow there. That's always the first step to do anytime you go to use the machine. If this is up out of the way, you will also see oil flow come out down here because it's not hooked up. Most of the time it's best to leave that there so the oil stays in and falls in through the drain pan back in, and we keep it dry. As you see on this one, we've put a little bed of floor dryer around there because a lot of times oil will drip off and leak. But that's where we check the oil. We are cutting metal pipe with metal dies, so we have to put a lubricant on or we will damage the dies. Just like in Millwright hand tools, the tap and die set. We had to use an oil there or we break the die. So this has got a lot more power than a hand die, so we have to have oil. You can either load the pipe from the front, or we could go around to the back of the machine. If it's a long piece of pipe, if it's 10, 20 foot long, something like that, we are going to have a stand out here, a stand on this opposite side. This end just turns clockwise, and all this does is stabilize this end. Keeps it turning in a true circle when we tighten it up. So again, counterclockwise to loosen, clockwise to tighten. All we're doing is holding it level that way. We're not tightening this one. Now when we come down to this end, this is where our torque is going to be when we're cutting the pipe, when we're cutting the threads. So we are going to turn this one now counterclockwise to tighten, clockwise to loosen, and once we get it up there tight, you see the 3 jaws move in and out evenly. So we'll center that pipe in there, and then on this end we lock it by going. Usually 2-3 times is good. You'll notice right away when you get in there that if it's not locked down, that we need to put more force against it. So when they talked about in the written test, counterclockwise on this one to tighten it, the centering device is opposite. Okay? Now we would lay out our dimension and we would measure to what we wanted to cut off. I'm not going to make a mark on there. We're just going to cut it off or go through that process. Here is the cutter. Looks a lot like the pipe cutter. Actually, I'm going to do it on this one. That is hooked up, plugged in. So we'll get the threader out of the way, bring this down. Again, I'm not going to cut off a certain length, not going to measure it. You guys know how to measure and do those things. We're going to open this up until it goes over the pipe, and we're just going to put a little bit of pressure. Remember with the hand cutter how we kept increasing that pressure to go through it? Well, with this one we'll do that, but the pipe is going to turn. The hand threader, we went around and cut it. One other thing I need to show you guys, or a couple things I need to show you on this other machine before we cut it. These switches over here. There's a off, a forward, and a reverse. We don't use the reverse. And the other thing is we never flip this switch while the pipe machine is engaged or running. So what we'll do is we'll put it on forward, and then here's our speed. We use the 36 to cut the pipe and to ream the pipe. When we go to thread the pipe, we use the 12 RPMs because there's so much more torque needed when we cut the threads than when we cut it or ream out the pipe. But when we're cutting those threads in there, there's 4 dies are gripping around there and there's a lot more torque. So on this one, it's in the 12 RPMs, but we're going to be cutting the pipe. So what I do, the easiest way, it's plugged in. I've inspected all the cords. I've inspected everything before we did this. And there's a foot pedal down here. It's in forward, and like I say, it's on slow speed. So we would step on the foot pedal and then just turn the speed. Kind of like shifting a manual transmission car or truck. If it does grind, it's not a big deal. Okay, now we got it on high speed, and we'll slowly start increasing the pressure. As you see, I'm turning the handle. Boom, we're done. Now, the next step, if you look in at the end of the pipe, we push that metal in to cut it. So what we have to do is get rid of that little lip that is inside there. The reason we do that, for example, the air hose that we have up there is fed by a metal pipe. If we leave those pieces in there, eventually the flow of the air will break those little pieces off and we'll get them trapped in our tools and things like that. So we want smooth laminar flow going through things, so we clean all that off. Again, we leave it in high speed. This reamer is just like a sharpened piece to put in there. And all we do is move this handle here to move the whole tray back and forth. Some people hold it down. All we're trying to do is get rid of that lip inside. We're trying to make that smooth. Need to go a little bit more. There's still a lip. Okay. One more. Okay, much smoother, much better. What you don't want to do is over-ream that, because we're going to be cutting away metal to make threads on the outside. We don't want to cut away too much of the inside, or it makes our pipe weak. That's where it breaks. So we're doing this. Now, here's probably the biggest part, the hardest part of the threading machine, the die. First off, we always check the die on the ends of these. And obviously it's easier to see the ones up here than the ones down here, but it'll say what size the dies are used for. These are going to say 1 to 2 inch NPT. NPT is the abbreviation for National Pipe Thread. So we are cutting 1 inch pipe. How do we get the size pipe? We take a piece and we measure inside diameter. So I can hold this here so the camera can get it. We're going to take it. I always go past where there's less marks, so past the 12-inch mark. The inside diameter of that pipe is 1 inch. The outside diameter is 1 1/4, 1 5/16. But it's 1 inch pipe because our inside diameter. Now we are going to cut threads on the outside so that this fitting will screw on there, or whatever fitting we're using. So we're going to remove metal from the outside to make that fit. So we would set our pipe threader with the 1 to 2 inch dies all the way here at the bottom. There's a line right there, and I don't expect you guys to see it very well on there, but we're going to try and line that up. So we're going to be right with that line, maybe a hair below. So now we've reamed out the pipe, we've cut the pipe to the length we wanted, or we're threading this end and then we'll cut the other end to what we need. This handle opens and closes. This little knob here, when the pipe gets to where it's threaded the correct length, with it closed, it'll pull this and it pops this handle open. Okay? So we close it. We turn our speed because now we're threading back to our 12. And we move this handle and slowly engage it into the pipe. Notice I'm holding pressure against it. Once it starts to make threads, it will actually pull itself on there. I don't know if you can see it yet or not, but it's cutting the threads in. So as we go forward, this is going to continue to cut and cut. I could let go of it at this point and it would pull it all the way in there. I just keep my hand on it to be on the safe side. See how that pipe end is getting closer and closer to the kick out? And as we continue to cut threads, handle kicked out, we open it the rest of the way and slide it off. That's why we never use reverse. It automatically does this. So at this point, we would take a wire brush, clean off the threads, if there's anything hanging up on them. Some people use a rag, but it just contaminates the threads. At this point, we will check and see if we have the proper thread depth. The way we do that, the book says between 2.5 and 3.5 turns. So I just do it this way. I screw it on there as far as I can, and I count my way back. So I'm a little ways past 90 here, so that's 1 turn. It's 2 turns, and it's starting to come off about 2.5. I would probably go through, loosen this up just a hair, slide this line down just a hair more. I moved it a little. I don't know if you could see that or not. And then I would go through and cut it 1 more time. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but we would just engage it on the threads there again. It'll follow the already done threads, but it will just be cutting a little bit out. At this point, I'm not going to continue that because it's just doing the same thing that I showed you already once. So at that point, that's how we do the basic of the cutting. I'll make another video showing how we lay out and how we calculate everything together. So if you have any questions, call or email.